Interesting Super Bowl facts. With the Super Bowl right around the corner, today we will be taking a look at some interesting facts that you may not have known. 1. There has never been a shutout in the Super Bowl. Shockingly, through the 57 Super Bowls in league history, there has never been a team that has been shut out in the big game. This is very surprising considering the elite defenses that have led their teams to glory. 2. Highest scoring Super Bowl. While there have never been any shutouts in Super Bowl history, no two offenses have been able to replicate what the San Diego Chargers and San Francisco 49ers did in Super Bowl 29. In this game, they combined for 75 points in a blowout 49-26 win for the 49ers. This went on to be the highest scoring game in Super Bowl history. 3. Lowest scoring Super Bowl. On the flip side of this is the lowest scoring game in Super Bowl history. While many would think this matchup would have happened in one of the earlier matchups back in the 60s, this would be far from the case. The lowest Super Bowl came in Super Bowl 53 in 2019 between the Los Angeles Rams and New England Patriots, where New England would come out on top by a final score of 13-3. This is very surprising for a Tom Brady-led team, even with them playing against an elite Rams defense. 4. Biggest blowout in Super Bowl history. While the San Francisco 49ers' dominant win over the San Diego Chargers would go down in history as the highest scoring game in Super Bowl history, just years prior they would be a part of the biggest blowout in Super Bowl history. In Super Bowl 24, they took on the Denver Broncos in what would go on to be arguably the most boring Super Bowl of all time. At the final whistle, San Francisco was leading 55-10, with a 45-point margin of victory being the biggest ever. 5. Largest spread in Super Bowl history. Shockingly, the 49ers Super Bowl matchup against the San Diego Chargers was not only history due to the offensive explosion. Heading into the game, the 49ers also made history as the biggest favorites in Super Bowl history, with them being favored by 18.5 points. Possibly even more impressive is that they were able to comfortably cover the spread. 6. Player with the most passing yards in a Super Bowl game. Moving on from team records to individual records, we will now take a look at the player who has thrown for the most passing yards in a Super Bowl game. Tom Brady currently holds the title when he threw for 505 yards against the Philadelphia Eagles. Along with his 505 yards, Brady also threw for 3 touchdowns. Shockingly, despite this incredible day through the air, the Patriots still lost by a final score of 41-33. Brady also holds the second-place spot as well with his 466-yard performance in his historic comeback against the Atlanta Falcons. 7. Player with the most rushing yards in a Super Bowl game. While Brady's record-setting passing game came in a loss, the same cannot be said for the player who holds the title for most rushing yards in a Super Bowl. In Super Bowl 22, Timmy Smith ran for a ridiculous 204 yards in the Washington Redskins' dominant 42-10 win over the Denver Broncos. Along with his 204 yards, Smith also ran for 2 touchdowns on only 22 touches. 8. Player with the most receiving yards in a Super Bowl game. Unsurprisingly, arguably the greatest wide receiver of all time, Jerry Rice holds the record for most receiving yards in the Super Bowl. He set this historic mark in Super Bowl 23, where the San Francisco 49ers took on the Cincinnati Bengals. While the 49ers would narrowly escape with a 20-16 win, Rice pulled in 11 passes for 215 yards and 1 touchdown. 9. Minnesota Vikings Super Bowl curse. This next fact is going to be a tough pill to swallow for any Minnesota Vikings fans. Currently, they are tied with the Buffalo Bills for the second most lost Super Bowls in NFL history with 4 losses. In their first appearance, they were stomped by the Kansas City Chiefs by a final score of 7-23. The Miami Dolphins beat them in their second appearance 7-24. The Pittsburgh Steelers sent them home in their third appearance by a score of 6-16. And in their most recent trip to the Super Bowl, the Oakland Raiders beat them 14-32. However, to make things even worse for the Vikings, they have never even held a lead in any of these Super Bowl matchups. 10. First Super Bowl halftime singer, Carol Channing. While the Super Bowl halftime show is now one of the biggest honors a performer can receive, this was not always the case. In the 1970 Super Bowl in New Orleans between the Minnesota Vikings and Kansas City Chiefs, Carol Channing became the first halftime singer in NFL history. Interestingly, the show was mostly centered around USC's marching band, which performed a tribute to Mardi Gras and a reenactment of the 1815 Battle of New Orleans. But Channing would take the stage to sing when the Saints go marching in with the Super Bowl taking place in that city. When speaking about the experience, Channing was quoted as saying, "We had no idea it would be such a big deal or set the tone for future halftime shows. I'm not a sports fan, but I am a fan of sports fans. I think I received more attention from my 2 halftime appearances at the Super Bowl on daytime TV than I did for my entire tour of Hello Holly." 11. Teams to never make the Super Bowl. Depending on how the conference championship games go, this piece of history could change, but for the time being, the Detroit Lions, Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Houston Texans are the only teams to never make the Super Bowl. Detroit has a chance to make their first appearance this season if they are able to defeat the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship. However, it could be a fair amount of time before the other teams on the list have a chance of making an appearance in the big game. 12. Team with the most Super Bowl appearances. Currently, the New England Patriots have a stranglehold for the title of most Super Bowl appearances in franchise history. As it stands, the Patriots have 11 appearances, with the Denver Broncos, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Dallas Cowboys being tied in second with 8. In their 11 trips, they took on the Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers, St. Louis Rams, Carolina Panthers, Philadelphia Eagles, 2 games against the New York Giants, the Seattle Seahawks, another game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and their most recent Super Bowl appearance against the Los Angeles Rams. 13. Teams with the most Super Bowl wins. While the New England Patriots have the outright title for most Super Bowl appearances, they are tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers for the most wins in Super Bowl history. Currently, both teams are sitting at 6 wins. The Patriots' wins came in 2002 in a 20-17 win over the St. Louis Rams, 2004 beating the Carolina Panthers 32-29, 2005 taking down the Philadelphia Eagles 24-21, 2015 winning 28-24 against the Seattle Seahawks, 2017 in an overtime win against the Atlanta Falcons by a score of 34-28, and their final win coming against the Los Angeles Rams in 2019 by a score of 13-3. Pittsburgh's first title came in a 16-6 win over the Minnesota Vikings in 1975. They then won the next season's Super Bowl as well by a score of 21-17 against the Dallas Cowboys. The next win came in 1979 once again over the Cowboys, winning by a final score of 35-31. Pittsburgh pulled off a second repeat title, winning in 1980 by a score of 31-19 over the Los Angeles Rams. After a gap, they would take down the Seattle Seahawks 21-10 in 2006. Their most recent title came in 2009 in a 27-23 win over the Arizona Cardinals. 14. Who has the most Super Bowl MVPs? Keeping things related to the Patriots, we will now take a look at the player who has won the most Super Bowl MVPs. Unsurprisingly, this is another title that belongs to Tom Brady. He won 4 of these MVPs as a member of the Patriots and won in his lone Super Bowl win with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Currently, Joe Montana holds down second place with 3, making this another record of Brady's that is unlikely to ever be broken. 15. Most viewed Super Bowl. Rounding out the list is a record that could very well be broken this season. Currently, last year's Super Bowl matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles, with some sources saying 115.1 million people watched the game. If the Chiefs are able to make a return to the big game, there is no doubt that more people will be tuning in this year.